Thank you, Kostas. I said to him this morning, I woke up and I had a little bit of a giggle because I would call myself technologically challenged. I fight with my iPhone every day. I tend to have my computer ask me if I would like to reconfigure at the moment when I'm doing a presentation. So usually I just call system support when it comes to the ITF. I want to thank Claire and Max for excellent presentations. Again, this is not me being an expert. I'm talking on someone who's trying to get my head around what is automation, what does that mean, how would it impact our members. I also want to thank IMEC for including us. I want to thank Francesco and Phil and Adam, and also Stephanie and Hillary. I want to thank Rajesh, the outgoing chair, and the incoming chair, Bilal. And I also want to thank the support of my colleagues and the ITF affiliates who are here today. They probably wonder, what does she actually know about automation? Because that's, again, not my technical expertise, but at one point you just have to fake it till you make it. The world is fast changing, and the ways of producing and exchanging goods are especially being challenged by this and the increased automation in the workplace. Yet, we have found out that it is difficult to accurately predict the job market will look like in 20 to 30 years' time. Shipping, of course, is not immune to any of the developments that we're seeing today, and shipboard technology, information, communication, data exchange, and shore-based support systems are fast evolving. And we can only speculate to a certain degree on what impact this will have on shipping and seafarers in the medium to long term. But of course, we see here in this group that there are many that are endeavoring to answer these questions and how we can shape the future of shipping, and this is a priority for the ITF as well and for our affiliates. We as the ITF, of course, want to be actively being in the debate around autonomous or smart ship because we want to help get a better understanding of the issues, the challenges, and also the opportunities that will arise, and we want to give our information and our views to other stakeholders in the industry as well. We are ready to be an agent of change in support of a smooth transition that can result in improved safety and bring about high-quality employment and training for maritime professionals to ensure economically, socially, and environmentally sustainable development of new technologies. For the shipping industry, in the near and distant future, this will require an investment in human element. So, wrong way. There you go, technically challenged with even pushing a button. In January 2019, the World Maritime University launched a report called Transport 2040, Automation, Technology, Employment, the Future of Work. Now this report was fully funded by the ITF, and the reason why we commissioned this report as an independent study was because there is a lot of hype around technology and automation. It's mainly dominated by tech companies and not the social partners. Therefore, we, the ITF, wanted a snapshot situation so that we could be better equipped to advise our members and provide them with information so that we can have a voice in this discussion. Innovation and technology is, of course, nothing new in the maritime industry, always been a part of the transport development. New technologies have normally been introduced to transport for safety and efficiency reasons, and also environmental reasons. And new technology usually changes the nature in how a job is performed. It could require new skill sets or a change of working routines. And in some cases, it can reduce the demand for certain skills while creating demands for new skills. So we have and are being told that we are in the fourth industrial revolution, which when I asked for that to be explained, it was explained to me as a time that is characterized by the integration of artificial intelligence and an increased degree of automation and autonomy. Technological developments are happening. This requires the stakeholders globally and nationally to discuss the impact, the implications, and the timelines. And for the ITF, the priority is how this impacts the workers short-term, medium-term, and long-term. But I want it to be said that the ITF and trade unions are not against technology, but we want it to improve and enhance the workplace and the environment, and not to replace or negatively displace workers. So this WMU report was intended to use a partial basis for further discussion about automation and technologies and employment. And it's a start, it's not a finished product, because any report that's being done is basically a snapshot of that time, and soon could be irrelevant because things will continue to evolve. So in the report, there are 5 main findings, key findings that I'll just pull up. And what's the catalyst for automation? That's the economic benefit, it's the demographics and safety. But we do see in the report that areas of global transport, the pace in the introduction of automation will be gradual. I also want to say that this report is not just about shipping. This also looked at other transport modes, so maybe 40% of the report is shipping, and then the rest, 60%, is on the other transport modes, because we wanted to see how shipping and maritime was compared to the other industries. The second key finding was that we believe that there is, of course, be an increase of volume, which will lead to more demand of transport in the future. But we do see and expect that regional changes and transportation patterns are expected to occur. Of course, there's going to be a greater exposure for low and medium skilled workers, but again, the pace of introduction of technologies will vary depending on the countries, and in many automation is likely to result in a shift of workforce, but not in a labor reduction. And with that, I mean remote operators, worldwide crew. But this, again, could create a challenge, which goes a little bit to what Max was saying, to avoid a race to the bottom when it comes to wage and working conditions. The fourth is that automation technology are influenced by local context, which means that some countries or in some regions, we see that the same level of readiness to adopt technologies and automation are not there. Because when we tend to talk about automation technology, we tend to talk about it as if everyone is on the same level, and we just are not on the same level. The fifth is that transport has a high potential, but of course a slower adoption rate. And this could be because of the complex legal questions posed in regards to safety and liability. But that's just a speculation, I'm just saying. It's not been anything scientifically proven. So the WME report also showed that there were 4 clusters of new technologies. Automation, of course, that's autonomous commuter trains, automated ships and airplanes, cranes and control centers, maintenance, and with that meaning condition-based maintenance, inspection drones, repair robots, manufacturing spare parts, interfaces, meaning chatbot, which I actually had to Google because I didn't know what that was. And for those of you who don't know, it's a computer program or artificial intelligence that conduct a conversation via an auditory or textual methods. And this is often used in the travel industry for travel marketing. And customer service on the user interface, customer service robots that will provide information when required. And there is also new, meaning a one-stop shop for logistics services, cross-modal, transport on demand, and availability-oriented business models. So, looking at this study and trying to get our heads around what does this actually mean. And we picked the WMU because the WMU had access to a vast amount of data. Because the United Nations system, so they were able to collect a lot of data. And they said that the more they collected the data and the more amounts of data they collected in areas, not just within maritime, it required them to include more people so that they can actually go through the data and try to figure out what does that mean? What does it mean? So when looking at assessing the likelihood and the pace, and again, this is a little bit of a speculation, there are different factors that could influence more or less the technology and automation, and it's WMU have looked at that we can divide it into 5 probably indicators. The first being technology and innovation, and that's considered the main indicator for for the transformation of maritime transportation sector. And this indicates the conditions that allow different actors in the maritime sector to innovate and introduce new technology. But of course, it is dependent on what extent a country has advanced in secure and connected information and communication technology structure to support the development and adoption of new technologies in the maritime transport. But it is also related to a country's ability to foster and realize innovations that could have an impact. The second indicator is human capital and skills. And according to the OECD, human capital is defined as the knowledge, skills, competencies, and other attributes embodied in individuals or groups of individuals acquired during their life and used to produce goods or ideas in the marketplace. Now, the level of the human capital and skills identifies a country's ability to shift in the maritime transport triggered by the fourth industrial revolution, and looking at both current workforce capabilities as well as long-term ability to acquire the right skills and talent in the future. And the human capital and skills in the field of education could be measured by certain indicators as education, availability of scientists and engineers, digital skills among population, and labor force capabilities. So in the maritime technology field, we could potentially measure this by ratio of officers to total seafarers, number of naval, architectural, universities and schools. The third indicator that I want to mention is regulation governance, which can either encourage the adoption of technology or be an impediment. The effectiveness of governments to enact and implement regulation is a constraint on the ability of the private sector to respond to change regarding the adoption of new and emerging technologies. Therefore, this indicator shows the ability of government institutions, rules and regulations, and their contribution towards technological development, new business, and advancing the maritime transport sector. The fourth being infrastructure quality, as of course we know that efficient and effective infrastructure is key to a healthy economic growth, since economies are dependent on high-quality roads, transport systems, ports and airports that enable the delivery of goods and services to customers in a safe and secure and timely manner, while simplifying movement. When you look specifically at maritime, there are two indicators under this, and that is the quality of ports and connectivity. The fifth and last one is business and investment, and this aims, the indicator, you need to assess the country's involvement to facilitate the exchange of knowledge and technology and to establish global connections. So one of the things that we're talking about when it comes to maritime is, of course, connectivity. When we talk about connectivity, we're talking about Wi-Fi, we're talking about ability to connect either by satellite or by phone. Myself, sometimes, and this is again, me not being a technological person, I don't get 4G in my apartment in London even, at times. So thinking you're having all these ships supposed to be going all around the world, I'm a little bit concerned, what if that just falls out? What do you do then? Now, I'm sure there are different answers to that, but for me, it's, well, what if that just falls out? When I'm trying to download a Netflix series or watch a Netflix series, and then my Wi-Fi goes, what then? Now, that's okay when I'm sitting in London, but when you're on a ship that is supposed to be remotely controlled or even completely autonomous, that makes a question for me like, I don't understand it. I do not understand it. I try to get my head around it, but I just cannot understand it. There was a situation, and I was told from my colleague in Norway who do CBAs for cruise, that there is, one of the cruise companies has this bar that I think they call it Robo Bar, and it's like the hype that you have robots that are the waiters serving the drinks to the customers. Well, interestingly enough, you have the robots serving the drinks, but you have to have a human to the robot so that nothing could happen because of liability. Well, one of the robots not that long ago had a little bit of malfunction and actually turned around and whacked the seafarer with the glass instead of putting the glass down on the table. Now, it is a bit funny because you think about that all of a sudden it turns around, supposed to put the glass down and then just hits the waitress over the head. But she actually lost consciousness and ended up in hospital with a concussion because the robot was quite strong. And then the question was the liability of who was liable for that being injured. So again, you know, I understand that it could be fun and interesting, but at the same time, if there was a malfunction, I don't know if I'd be so good at being able to tackle a robot. I probably could put a guy down if he tried to whack me, then I could a robot, but I don't. So, as I said, the report that we did, or commissioned the WMU, it is an independent. It was a snapshot, it was a basis, it wasn't the finished product. We want to look into expanding that and getting more information. So based on those indicators that they had identified to us, we've asked them to look in specific countries about the readiness. Not finished yet, but they are looking into and found that despite several ongoing discussions between the various stakeholders in the maritime industry, automation and autonomous ships, maritime is still very much at the beginning of this transformation compared to other transport sectors like aviation, trains, and of course now vehicles. And although we do know that there are many countries that are actually discussing regulations for autonomous, specifically mentioned Australia, China, Denmark, France, Japan, Norway, Republic of Korea, Sweden, and the US, they have found that no country has to date unveiled a comprehensive strategy for maritime transport in 2040. A strategy that combines regulation with innovation, competencies, skills, infrastructure, and future business models. So, just to bring you a little bit back to what my talk is about, automation versus seafarers, or seafarers and automation. I think we first need to assess and acknowledge that automation will changes for the workers, and these include employed by, where they are employed, how they are employed, which sector they are employed in, and which skills are needed for the future. And I'm not going to repeat because everyone knows that technology has been within maritime. There's been shifts from the beginning of time, the last 200 years. You know, you've gone from sail, coal to oil, oil to low emission, radar, and then electronic chart display and information, which I think people pronounce that as, yes. And seafarers have been part of this change. They've gone through these changes. The question will be needed to be asked and to be answered in the continued discussion is who, how, and where will those seafarers be employed in the future? And if from ship to shore, which legislation governs their employment? And as Max was saying, will they still be defined as seafarers? Now, at the end of the day, I'm not really concerned what you call them. My concern is what do they do and how are they protected, and they need to get the compensation and the skills and training to do that. So, new artificial intelligence assisting seafarers could, of course, promote safer and more efficient workplaces. New technology and artificial intelligence used to replace seafarers is a whole different story, and one that we are not going to readily agree to. We don't believe that systems and machines can simply replace those men and women who have been and are shaping the maritime industry. And we also have a concern that a small group of people controlling the data being it commodity, and the systems could use this to monopolize the political and economic powers worldwide. And then again, there's the about the social and economic impact for countries with a large percentage of seafarers if they are to be replaced by algorithms. So the IATF, our affiliates, and the employers, we do need to work together to ensure that we democratize decision-making process on how new technologies are used in order to steer away from the tech companies' dominance and towards the benefit of safety, efficiency, and environmental performance in the industry. So I just want to say that we need to ensure that new technology enhances the work and the environment and to ensure that the employers and employees have a voice in the discussion and not let them solely dominate. So that I think is my last slide. I think that it's, well, I mean, when you talk information and technology, it's always very complicated in my head. But it does not have a simple, linear impact on the workers. Too simplistic, even me not really understanding it, to say that it just replaces jobs. And the workers' side, we do. And some research show that technology can actually increase employment if it makes a product cheaper and makes labor more efficient, increases the demand. We also know that new technology can impact and probably will impact the wages. If it descales the process, then it can be used to drive the wages down. But if it requires workers with more complex skills, then it can increase the demand and then drive wages up. So I just want to leave you with 5 points that I think, or I hope that we can consider. And the first is that we need to better understand the unequal impact of technology could have on workers and vulnerable workers. The second, that we need an education system that encourages workers into high-tech areas, union-facilitated training and retraining. Third, we need to ensure that regulation incentivizes the creation of jobs, and maybe with an extra focus on gender, the ability to do that now. Fourth, we need a collective bargaining agreements and compensation structures where technology could have a negative impact on the workforce. And fifth, we need to work together as social partners and have a voice for the discussion of future technology. So that's basically my contribution to the discussion. I hope there's not too many technical questions for me because I don't have that expertise to answer based on just what we're looking at from an employee perspective. Thank you.
So today we are talking the shipmasters of today. They still retain all the responsibility in regard to main shipboard operations as it was years ago. But with the latest development of technology, the level of authority that they have on board a ship has been reduced. And that's quite a common discussion and complaint about shipmasters, that they have all the responsibility, but very limited authority. And even though SOLAS and they sort of provide that legal right and guarantee, we know that in practice it's not always that way. So with the new challenge that we have, with the technology now being another factor to probably alter that balance of responsibility and authority, is the work that has been done by ITF and scoping exercise that is ongoing in IMO to ensure that the responsibility for the possible human error or for the possible sort of those human factors is shared among the ship owners, shipmasters, and the manufacturers. Because I think that's going to be one of the biggest questions that we will have to solve in the nearest future, is that shared responsibilities for possible human error. Thank you.
So thank you. I think today is already a challenge. And that's why we have guidelines, the fair treatment of seafarers. Today it is already a challenge and has been for a long time. And we have fair treatment guidelines that are not mandatory. Now, if you made them mandatory, then everyone would run away. Everyone would sign up to them. So we've been trying to encourage countries legislation to be able to make sure that there is due process, that there is fair treatment. And I don't think this is going to make it any easier, But at the same time, today, there is an unfair balance of responsibilities, because as you say, yes, companies are monitoring, companies are collecting that data. Companies do see, they have remote control, but it is the master or is the chief engineer that are going to be arrested. We work with Seafarers' Rights Institution, with Deirdre Fitzpatrick, and they are looking into, and they have assisted. We have been working with the IMO to do those workshops. We did one in the IMO, and we had one in Manila. We do want to take it regionally, because one of the issues is complex about criminalization of seafarers is that you involve several different departments, usually within a country. So it's not just one. It could be the Environment Department, it could be the Labor Department, it could be the Justice Department, it could even be the Immigration Department, depending on what departments they have. So today it's already super complex that no one can figure out. And there is an imbalance today. Try to make it more balanced? Well, I hope so, because we have been fighting for the rights of the seafarers to have a in the event of accidents. But we also want to look into that for generally, so when they're accused of drug smuggling, a sealed container that has never been anywhere near the seafarers is found to contain drugs, and then they arrest the crew, who, say the cook, who is, I mean, that doesn't have anything to do with that. That already today is complicated situations. So, yeah, we're not scoping it to that extent, as you were saying. We should, but at the moment we're just trying to get the fair guidelines implemented in all legislations around the world.
Thank you, Jackie. I think more discussion can take place during lunch in our social space. Thank you very much once again, Jackie.
Thank you.